Hi, I'm Real Deal MMA, and in this video I'm going to give you my breakdowns, predictions and bets on this UFC 284 card in Australia. So, first off, I want to thank everyone that subscribed and gave me feedback on the videos. The YouTube algorithms have been quite brutal and my UFC card got buried in the algorithms, but my Bellator card got some nice views and I got some subscribers from that. So hopefully the people that watched that followed my advice and bet Ryan Bader. That came through comfortably. Told people to bet him on the money line, add him to your parlays and bet the unders, and that all cashed. So let's hope we have the same success on this UFC 284 card. So the first fight of the card is Tukhugov versus Brener. So if we look at the betting odds on this fight, then minus 500 is Tukhugov. So that's 90% implied by the bookmakers. They're saying that he has a 90% chance of winning here. So Zub is the biggest favourite on the card. So if we look at Elvis is very much a BJJ guy. He's 25 years old. He has 13 wins and 3 losses, with 85% of his wins coming by way of submission. So he's very much a BJJ guy and not much else. Elvis is plus 410. So Zub is just a massive betting favourite on this card. So this fight is very much an experienced veteran in Tukhugov, who's been fighting in the UFC nearly 9 years now, versus a debutant who's only really got one trade, and that's pure BJJ and not much else. So how do I see this fight playing out? Who's going to win, and are there any bets here? So no surprises here. I'm picking Tukhugov to win. Elvis is sub or bust, and he looks awkward defensively on the feet. He has some awkward but passable striking. His kicks are okay, but nothing particularly stands out. His jab to the body is okay, but defensively he looks clumsy and he's there to be hit. He can look really clumsy defending strikes, especially on the back foot. And he also looks suspect when he's on the fence. He struggles to escape and he can be cornered and pressured. Elvis needs range. Despite his okay kicking, he's not got a lot of power and he lacks speed to hurt Tukhugov. Elvis is quite accurate with his jab and his leg kicks, but they have no real bite to them. He also has bad optics when he's fighting. When he's tired, he really shows it off in his body language. You'll see him taking these big puffs, and it's just not good from a judging perspective. By the second round, sometimes he can look quite tired. He's not particularly high volume, and he's defensively very open. His chin can be very dangerously up in the air when he lacks cardio, and that's a big red flag. And this is why the odds are so wide here. I'm not even that surprised, really, that these odds are wide, because as I said, there are so many red flags with Elvis. Even his grappling I'm not totally sold on. There were times where he was fighting quite low-level opponents and he was being controlled. He has improved since the likes of Dennis Silva, where he got that victory. But even during the Victor Nunes fight, he doesn't look impressive at all to me wrestling. And his brain tends to shut off for periods. He's the sort of BJJ guy that could get subbed from guard because he mentally shuts off. He's not really that skilled with his offensive jiu-jitsu. I wouldn't really call him that smooth with his transitions. So Tukhugov is someone that I would never bet at minus 500. But I expect Tukhugov to use his striking, initiate the clinch, where I think he will have success here. With Elvis, he looks suspect in the clinch, and I think Tukhugov will chain his takedowns and have success there, and win a clear decision victory. I'm not betting Tukhugov straight or adding him to parlays. But I do like the over at -278. I don't think that's a bad parlay piece, and that might be something to look at here if you needed a leg for your parlays. So next up we have Shane Young versus Blake Builder. Shane Young is 13-6 and Blake is undefeated with a 7-0 record. So this is a much more entertaining fight, and I think the first fight will be fairly dull in comparison to this. Personally, I think this has a huge potential to be exciting. Shane Young is often in really exciting fights, and I really like what Shane Young is about. His hackers are hilarious and always a must watch in the weigh-ins. First time we saw him do that against Dana, Dana didn't know what he was going on. It was absolutely hilarious. And Dana looked completely bemused by it. Probably one of my favourite MMA videos ever. So, if we look at the odds of this fight, Shane Young is -125 and Blake Builder is +115. So it's basically a straight pick'em. I expect more action to come in on Young. He seems to be quite popular with Twitter and Facebook. But there's obviously some sharp money on Blake, as the odds have held. So, Shane Young is coming off 2 losses, and we haven't seen him compete since 2021. We saw Blake Builder, where he looked impressive last time out, with a first round victory in a Dana White Contender Series as a +180 underdog against Morgan, who was actually a -210 favourite in that. So, unlike a lot of Dana White Contender Series fighters, Blake is 32 years old, so he's not some young prospect, but I wouldn't call him experienced either. Undefeated, yes, but with a smallish pro sample size of just 7 fights. So, Blake is well rounded. He's got some effective wrestling, and his boxing is quite good. He has this wide stance where he likes to throw powerful head kicks, and he can start off at a fight at quite a slow pace. He's very open to be leg kicked, and I expect Young to have some success with the leg kicks. Blake's leg kick being exposed because of the wide stance that he uses. Blake tends to be quite predictable with his movement, and again I think Shane Young could have success with the striking pressuring him. Blake is a submission threat here, and as we saw against Morgan, when he hurt Morgan on the feet, he was so quick to get that back in an instant. If Young fights outside the pocket, uses those lower leg kicks and the jab, out of range, Young could run away with this. But I don't trust Young's fight IQ. He could be winning the fight until he's not. I can't help but think Young looks good and then gets caught with a counter, and Blake either gets his back or stops him with strikes. This is a winnable fight for Young, but I personally don't trust him to implement a good game plan. So my final prediction here is Blake Builder to win inside the distance. I think Blake counters Young, hurts him, and gets his back. Blake is so smooth with his transitions, especially when his opponent is hurt. So I do have a bet on this card. I have Blake Builder, scorecards no action, at -115. I think the finish is the most likely path for victory for Blake. And the submission prop is something that I would urge people to look out for as well, especially if we get some really nice odds on it. I do see a scenario where Young could win a decision, but I don't see him finishing Blake. But I do see Blake finishing Young. So scorecards no action seems a better way of playing this if you fear that Young could get the decision here. So that's a bet that I really like. Blake Builder, scorecards, no action. And my prediction is Blake Builder to win by submission, probably second round. Next fight up is Loma versus Elise Reed. So Loma is 7-3 and Elise Reed is 6-2. So I think Elise Reed is better than her record suggests. I've heard some people say this is a low-level fight. I don't think it's a low-level fight. But I really do see Loma winning this fight. And this is a fight that stylistically really favours her. But then if we look at the odds, she is a -300 favourite, which I think is about right on here. On the feet, Loma should be the superior fighter technically. She's more dangerous with the elbows, especially in the pocket, but Reed does hit harder. With regards to the grappling, Loma should actually have the advantage here, and I think we might see her pursue that. Loma has improved her overall grappling lately and added some nice BJJ. She's always had some good tied trips, but the red flag here is she can be overconfident in her grappling now, and she can put herself in some precarious positions. But I don't see Reed really being the one to take advantage of that. Elise Reed has some okay taekwondo base. She can be quite physically strong, but she does nothing particularly good with her striking. But she can be effective in bursts. But she struggles with range, and she's open to be leg kicked, and she's open to the body. And they're two things that Loma will use to her advantage here. Reed also slows down in fights, and she can be flat-footed. And when she slows down, she can easily be hit. Her optics are not good, and I think she often shows low fight IQ. She gets frustrated in fights, and her body language, the overall optics are not good for the judges. Loma should have Reed covered everywhere here. And I don't blame people for adding Loma to their parlays, or betting her on the money line. I think there is a scenario where Reed could make this closer than odds suggest. But I don't see it. I think Loma by decision is probably a good bet here. Or just bet Loma on the money line. I will be betting Loma in parlays. And I'll probably be betting her on the money line also. So my final prediction is Loma to win by decision. And I think she wins quite comfortably. She's got way more paths to victory. And she really shouldn't be losing this fight. Next up, we have Jack Jennings versus Don Shainis. And Jack Jennings has a 10-2 record and Don has a 12-4 record. So, if we look at the betting odds on this fight, Jack Jennings is a -300 favourite and Don is +365 underdog. So, Don will look to get this fight to the mat almost instantly, where he has a heavy top pressure game, he has powerful strikes and good ground and pound. I think from a side perspective here, I think it's dog or pass. Jack is a good prospect, but there's nothing on tape that tells me that he should be -300 here. I wouldn't be adding him to your parlays, and I certainly wouldn't be betting him on the money line here. There's a lot of questions that need answering, and there isn't enough on tape to really show me that he should be -300 here. I think the value is very much on Don. But I'm not betting it. I am tempted. But it is going to be a pass for me. But I do think the betting value is on Don here. My prediction here is Don wrecks a lot of people's parlays, gets the takedown, gets the early finish, and gets the KO victory. Next up, we've got Australia's very own Jamie Mullarkey. He's got 15 wins and 5 losses. 10 of those wins have all come from KO. And he's been knocked out 3 times. He's fighting 20-year-old Francisco Prado, who's currently undefeated with an 11-0 record. All those fights have gone inside the distance. So, this fight really screams violence. Everything about this fight screams violence. So if we look at the betting odds here, Jamie Mullarkey is quite a big favourite. He's around minus 260. And Prado is around plus 215. So, looking at Prado's record and looking at the odds, I thought there might be a bet here on the underdog. But the more I looked into it, the more I wasn't really that impressed by Prado. I've heard some people compare him to Paulo Costa, but I don't see that. I think Paulo Costa looked a lot more dangerous when he was younger. Paulo was physically stronger. He had a lot more power and he had a lot more technique. Even in his sort of green days when he was young and knocking people out such brutal fashion. But Prado doesn't impress me that much. I look at his record, yeah, it's good, but who is he beaten? Seems to be a lot of hype on this guy. People saying he's an absolute savage. I think he's reckless. And he's shown some red flags when he's taken down. He can be controlled quite easily. He's only 20 years old, so there is scope for him to really improve and be a face in the UFC. But I think this is too early and too much of a step up for him. As I say, he looks so incredibly raw, and it's hard to tell how good or bad he really is. So, with Jamie is always there. Yeah, he's been knocked out 3 times. The guy's an absolute warrior. So entertaining to watch. And he's got power. He's a born finisher. And he loves to get these fights over quickly. But his odds are quite wide. So, I think the obvious bet has got to be the violence bet, which is the under 2.5. Which is around minus 149. That's not a bad bet at current odds at minus 149. But I expect a lot of people to be playing that. It will be the obvious bet, and it'll probably be a good parlay piece. As I said, this fight is just going to be pure violence. I'd be very surprised if it went the distance. But, you know, we've seen fights like this go the distance before. As we say, this is a big step up for the young Argentinian. We don't really know how good his chin is or how bad it is. But Jamie's definitely going to test that. So my prediction is Jamie Mullarkey to win inside the distance. I think he wears him down. But I think there's much better chalk to bet on this card. I wouldn't bet Jamie at these odds because there's so many question marks about how good or bad Prado really is. Next fight up is Shannon Ross versus Kleydson Rodriguez. So Shannon Ross has a record of 13-6 and Kleydson has a record of 7-2. Shannon Ross is 33 years old and he's coming off a loss. I won't spend too much time on this. I think Kleydson has Shannon Ross covered absolutely everywhere. And I think even at current odds, Kleydson is a minus 300. I still think there's a bit of value on that. I think Kleydson is a good parlay piece and bet him on the money line. Why is Shannon Ross even in the UFC? I don't understand it. It can only be the Australian connection here. I think Kleydson absolutely styles on him. And I think Kleydson Rodriguez should be about minus 400 here. I just don't see how this fight is even close. So as far as chalk goes, I think he's the safer chalk. Again, nothing is certain in this game. But I've got Kleydson Rodriguez to win. And I think he does it inside the distance. And I think he does it fairly early. Next up, we've got Josh Culibao versus Baghdasaryan. Joshua has 10 wins, 1 draw and 1 loss. Melsic has 7 wins and 1 loss. Joshua is going to have the 2-inch height advantage here, and he's also 3 years younger. both are coming off wins. This is another fun fight. Joshua has been underrated by the betting market for a while now, and I've cashed him a fair few times as a dog. I'm quite fond of Joshua, I love his fighting style, and I think he's got a lot of potential. But it looks like sharps have finally cottoned on to the fact and are betting him here, because this is a very much a pick-em fight. And I'm struggling to pick who I think will win and how I think this fight will play out. But I think it does play out largely on the feet. I don't think we see much grappling here. But I do think Melsik is a bit more technical. He has a bit better movement and slightly better at countering. But it's a really tough fight to be confident on. And I've been on the fence for a while and I've flipped a few times, which is never a good sign from a betting perspective. I'm going to pass on this fight and live bet it. But my prediction is Baghdasaryan wins, probably by a split decision. The next fight up is the return of Tyson Pedro, and he's fighting Modestas Bukauskas. Tyson Pedro is 9-3, and Bukauskas is 13-5. So Pedro's last fight, he got knocked out by Khalil Roundtree. If we look at the odds here, Tyson Pedro is a -250 favourite, and you can get +200 for Bukauskas. So, I think these odds are wide. I certainly wouldn't be adding Pedro to your parlays or on the money line. But I have no interest in betting Bukauskas either. I just don't rate him as much as some people do. He seems to get a lot of love on Twitter, and people love betting him as an underdog. But I think Tyson Pedro should be winning this fight. There are major red flags with Tyson Pedro, but I do think he's had a lot of bad luck in his career, and he should be further on than he is. But he's not a prospect anymore. He's 31 years old. He's not this green-hyped fighter anymore. But the odds are still really quite wide. But I'm not one that's going to be betting Bukauskas here. Again, might be some bias on my part. I just don't rate him as highly as other people. And I think Pedro should be getting the fight on the ground. Should have some success in the grappling. Should have some success on the feet. And probably the inside the distance cashes here. That's a -120. That is tempting. But it's definitely a pass from a betting perspective. And I might look to live bet it. But my prediction is Tyson Pedro inside the distance. Next up, we have another Aussie. We've got Jimmy Crute versus Alonzo Menifield. And this is a good fight. So, Jimmy Crute has 12 wins and 3 losses. And if we look at Alonzo's record, he has 13 wins and 3 losses. So, this is interesting from a betting perspective. So, if we look at Jimmy Crute, he's coming off 2 losses. One was actually against now current champion Hill. Before that, it was Anthony Smith. And both fights didn't make the second round. Menifield is coming on a 2-win streak. And he beat Misha Serkinov in the first round. And he beat Ukrainian fraud Askar Mozharov. That was absolutely brilliant. And one of the silliest betting lines of last year. Probably my favourite bet was Alonzo in that spot against the Ukrainian, who was found to have multiple different names and quite a murky MMA record. It was crazy that he was even signed to the UFC in the first place, and that was definitely one of my favourite bets last year. I've done pretty well betting Alonzo Menifield fights. So this should be really interesting. Crute is a -200 in some books, and Alonzo Menifield is a +170. So I've seen a fair amount of people on Alonzo Menifield, but it seems like the public is very much betting on Jimmy Crute. So the sharps seem to be on Alonso here, and it makes sense to me. Alonso is a dangerous opponent against anyone. He's got so much power. And there are questions about Jimmy Crute's durability. It's very much a dog or pass on this fight, and Crute really needs to pursue the wrestling. Menifield has an 85% takedown defense. Could Crute win on the feet here? Possibly, but I doubt he looks minus 200 if he does. I understand why Alonso is the popular dog here. And when you've got the public still adding Crute to their parlays and smashing him on the money line, that also makes me interested on the Menifield side here. So my prediction is Alonso Menifield gets the KO victory and the underdog wins here. I wouldn't be adding Crute to your parlays. I think the under 2.5 is a much better bet, and I'd probably add that to your parlays instead. Or bet Alonso Menifield for the value. I'm very tempted by Menifield at these odds, but at the moment it's a pass. But I might take the Alonso Menifield KO prop. That's very interesting. So I'm picking the dog here. The next fight up is Justin Tafa versus Parker Porter. Now this is a funny fight because it's split social media. People are really planting their flags on either side of this, which I find quite hilarious on such a low level heavyweight fight like this. But I'm actually looking forward to watching it. But there really does seem to be some strong opinions on either side, and it shows in the books. It's a pick'em here. Parker is the plus 110 and Tafa is a minus 120. But it wouldn't surprise me if the odds flip. There does seem to be some money coming in on Porter now. So it wouldn't surprise me at all if that did actually flip and Tafa became the underdog. But as I said, really strong opinions on this fight. Tafa backers seem to be really confident. They can't understand why people are betting Porter here. And Porter backers are quite surprised that Tafa is the favourite here. So it's going to be interesting to see who's right and who's wrong. If we look at their records, then Justin Tafa is coming off a win against Harry Hunsucker. I mean, Harry Hunsucker. I mean, the name is bad enough. Harry Hunsucker is so low level. And then we look before that, Justin Tafa's win against Jared. Actually, he lost, didn't he, by decision by Jared Vanderaa. Again, Jared Vanderaa. Very low level. He did fight Carlos Felipe to a close fight. I have to say, I think Justin Tafa is not particularly good. I think he's obviously got power, but there's nothing that's impressive me about his style. I do like his leg kicks. I think Porter is the more well-rounded fighter. He could get blasted out here, but I think he's got the wrestling upside. He's got the grappling upside. I think he's better in the clinch. Justin Tafa hasn't really got much of a ground game. He's just got the power, and he could light Porter up on the feet here. But I think Parker Porter is my prediction here, and I'm picking him to win, and I'm actually going to pick him to win by decision. That wouldn't surprise me at all. So my pick here is Parker Porter to win by decision. Next fight up, we've got Jack Della Maddalena versus Randy Brown. So, there's huge hype on Jack here, and it shows in the odds. Jack is minus 300 favourite, and Randy Brown is around plus 270 underdog. So, where do I think the value is on the line? I think it's probably about right here. Maybe there's slight value on Randy Brown. But Randy Brown, I have to say, is someone I've often underestimated. He's very well rounded. He's got a lot of experience. And Jack, despite how good his boxing has shown, there are some red flags with his grappling and clinch efficiency. We've seen him taken down earlier in his career, pre-UFC, and that's something that Randy Brown could definitely take advantage of. Brown has also quite underestimated striking. When he's in his rhythm, he's got a nice jab when he's in range, and he's quite surgical with his shots. He's got pretty good foot movement when he's in his flow, but he has to be out of range. There are some red flags though from a stylistic point of view that Jack could definitely take advantage of. And I think Randy could struggle with Jack's aggressive forward pressure, his boxing in the pocket, his physical strength, that body work is really nice from Jack. And I think that will cause Randy Brown a lot of problems. So my prediction here is Jack Della Maddalena wins by KO. Minus 120 for that. I think you could probably wait and get better odds for that. I think that's probably about right at the moment, plus minus 120. But it is tempting. I do think Jack Della Maddalena gets the victory here. I am seeing Randy Brown money coming in. And on the money line, yeah, it is a bit wide. But as I say, I think Jack gets the win here, and I think he gets it inside the distance. So next up, we've got Yair Rodriguez versus Josh Emmett. What an absolute banger this fight is. There's lots of bangers on this card, but this has got to be my favourite fight on the card. Absolutely brilliant fight. I'm really looking forward to it. So, if we look at the betting odds for this fight, currently, Rodriguez is currently the favourite, minus 167, but we're seeing more and more money coming on him, and it wouldn't surprise me if he got to a minus 200 here. So, if you like Yair, I would bet him now before his line becomes way too chalky. The public really do love him. If you like Josh Emmett, I would say wait, you'll get better odds near fight night. So where do I think the betting value is in this fight? I like Yair to win here. And I think the people that managed to get him early at minus 137, that was a great bet. I really like the fight to not go the distance here. I like the violence in this fight. I don't think we see the scorecards. And you can get plus money on that. I think that's a good bet, and that's a bet that I'll be placing. I'll also be placing a bet on Yair money line here. So, how do I see this fight playing out? I think this is going to be a striking affair. I don't think we see much grappling at all. I think both are capable of takedowns, so it's not going to be a one-sided grapple fest from Josh Emmett. Josh Emmett will fancy his chances on the feet. He's got power in both hands, and he drops people at a high clip. He will be confident that he can tag Yair here and get the finish. I think Yair is perfectly fine in the grappling department. I think he's got great get-ups if he does get taken down. His jiu-jitsu is good. So this will be played out on the feet. And I think that this is going to be a really interesting fight from a striking perspective. Two different styles. Josh will like to throw these big right hands, and he's got power in the left. But I think he leaves himself open in the middle. And Yair is exceptional with those knees down the middle. In the pocket, he's got the elbows. He's so technical, and he's very difficult to read. I think this is where he's going to have the advantage here. I think Josh won't be able to read him, and I think he gets pieced up in the pocket. I think there could be some sweaty moments. Maybe Yair does get dropped here, but I think he recovers, and I really like him to actually piece Josh Emmett up here. As I said, he's very difficult to read. Josh Emmett is 37 years old. Yair is 7 years younger. We haven't seen the decline yet for Josh Emmett, But at 37 years old, it's definitely coming. The power advantage is, of course, with Josh Emmett, and he's dangerous throughout this fight. But I believe the speed advantage is definitely with Rodriguez, and technically he's much more accurate. He has the better footwork, and I think we'll see some really, really technical striking from Rodriguez. My final prediction on this fight is Yair Rodriguez gets the victory and does it inside the distance. I like the bet, doesn't go to decision. I don't think we see the scorecards. These two, it just screams violence. And I think Yair gets the victory here. And for the main event, we've got Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski, two of the greatest MMA fighters I've ever seen. So Islam is 31 years old and Alexander Volkanovski is 34. Islam Makhachev is 3 inches taller and he's given up a slight reach advantage here. So if we look at the records, Islam is 23-1 and Volkanovski is 25-1. So if we look at the betting odds, Islam is about a -400 favourite and Volkanovski is about +300. So I actually price Islam Makhachev at around -50. Some people might be surprised at that, but I think he should be the wide favourite here. Weight classes for a reason, and this guy is just one in a generation fighter. I think he's elite, and I think he gives him some serious issues everywhere in this fight. I do think he has him covered everywhere, and I really do like Islam by finish here. I think he gets that sub. I think he gets the takedown, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if we don't see the round 3. Lots of people are picking Islam to go by decision, but I don't think so. I think this guy is so talented that he will sub Alexander Volkanovski. And that is my prediction. I'm predicting Islam Makhachev to win inside the distance. I'm totally okay with people adding Islam Makhachev to their parlays at these odds. And I think, why not bet him inside the distance? Because I absolutely love that bet, and it is a bet that I am placing. So, my final prediction is Islam Makhachev wins by submission, and he looks quite dominant doing it. So this is my betting slate. I'm on Yair Rodriguez on the money line. I got odds of about -161, but shop around, you might get better. So I'm also on Blake Builder, and I've got him scorecards no action, and that's around +100. He's also -115, and I would take that also. But if you can get the plus money, then definitely take it. I'm also on Yair Rodriguez, Josh Emmett. Fight doesn't go the distance. And I can get odds around +100 to +125. The next bet I'm on is a Loma by decision, and that is -11. Really like that bet. And the next bet I'm on is Islam Makhachev wins inside the distance, and that's -118. So the final bet of the card is a parlay. I often get messages about doubles or trebles, what parlays people should play. I like this one. This is a treble. So this is Kleydson Rodriguez, Loma, and Islam Makhachev. So that's a treble, and the odds are +128. And I really like that. So all these bets are one unit. So it's whatever one unit is to you. And these are my Tapology predictions on the other fights. So that concludes this video of UFC 284. Hope you really enjoy the event. I think it's a brilliant event. I've been Real Deal MMA, so please subscribe and like these videos, and there's plenty more content coming your way. Good luck.